Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. Arsenal move within touching distance of Chelsea for a top 4 spot with a convincing win over the Blues despite not being at their best. How did they do it? Where did Chelsea go wrong? Don't worry, here at the interviews, we've got you covered. So on this edition of the interviews, we're going to break down how Arsenal troubled Chelsea. So before we get into today's video, don't forget to give our video a thumbs up if you do enjoy it. The bell below does give you daily notifications regarding our organic, unfiltered soccer/footy analysis. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. In today's video, we're going to break down how Arsenal approached the game and why Chelsea struggled. Look at the first half, then see how Chelsea attempted to rescue the game in the second half. But first, let's get to the starting lineups. We look at Arsenal, midfield diamond, Lacazette, Aubameyang up front ahead of Ramsey, out in the shuttling role with Guendouzi and Tyrrell, and sitting at the base ahead of the back four, Xhaka. Then we move to Chelsea. No real surprises here. Still no striker, so Eden Hazard starts up front. Willian and Pedro out in the wider areas, and in the midfield, Jorginho, Kovacic, and Conte. So now let's look at the first half, see how both sides look to approach the game, and why Chelsea encountered so many difficulties in the first half. When we look at Arsenal against Chelsea, the big thing here was Emery moving to more of a midfield diamond. To no surprise, we saw Spurs do this against Chelsea, and they did cause them many problems, specifically shutting down Jorginho and ensuring that Chelsea had to play forward opposed to trying to build out of the back and suck them in. The same thing happened here. You had Ramsey flustering Jorginho from the start. You had Lacazette and Aubameyang pushing out to the center backs, and in midfield the numbers were even. You had Conte against Guendouzi, you had Tyrrell sticking with Kovacic, and then you had Xhaka who was able to sweep up if any of those players were beat. The problem here with the diamond was that it did allow space out in the wider areas for Azpilicueta and Marcos Alonso to be the out ball. Azpilicueta in this system doesn't really push forward. He kind of sits a bit narrow because Alonso often pushes forward into those advanced positions. But here it wasn't really a big deal because although eventually Arsenal would get sucked out of position, the problem was that when Azpilicueta and Marcos Alonso, specifically Alonso, got into those areas, there was no center forward to play crosses into. And that was the big issue that Chelsea did have when they got into those areas, because Arsenal were able to settle their backline in and they trust Socrates and Koscielny to win aerial duels over Willian, Hazard, and Pedro. So that was one thing. The other thing was that Arsenal could press from the front on goal kicks. So even when Jorginho tried to drop off a bit deeper, they could have Ramsey sit into those positions, have the center forwards push out to the center backs, and there again you have an issue. Sometimes you would see Guendouzi and Tyrrell, they are responsible for pushing out to press the fullbacks. Sometimes Guendouzi would stick with Conte, and then they would have Lacazette they would have Aubameyang push out to Azpilicueta to ensure that he couldn't get on the ball. That was how they were going about things. As for Chelsea, no real surprises. They stayed in their 4-5-1. They had Hazard press one center back and the shuttler in Conte would press the other. If Hazard went to the opposite side, you have Kovacic press the other. And that was kind of how they were going about things. They struggled to really gain control in midfield based on the fact that Arsenal had Ramsey tracking Jorginho wherever he went. And that was one of the big issues that they had. Hazard dropped off deep, and whenever he dropped off deep, Socrates held on to him to ensure that he couldn't turn or twist with his back to goal. So they stopped Hazard's threat in that regard. Then when you look at it, Arsenal just really had the upper hand in midfield. They were shutting down those areas, and they were finding space out in those wider areas because that's what they kind of want. Yes, they are a bit narrow, but Lacazette and Aubameyang are supposed to be pushing into those areas there and into the channel. So when you think about that and you think about Chelsea's nervy start, you can understand why Arsenal had some of the better chances in the opening 20 minutes. You look at Lacazette constantly trying to bomb into that space behind Marcos Alonso, combining with Bellerin. On one occasion, he played it in front of Alonso, and Lacazette dummied it, and that led to Luis eventually playing a poor pass into the back that led to a nervy moment for Chelsea. On another occasion, Lacazette actually got in behind Alonso for Bellerin to play that pass, and when Lacazette played that pass, he played it into the box. We saw Aubameyang run across Azpilicueta, and he can only flash a shot inches wide of the net. But that is what you expect from Arsenal. That's what they were trying to do. Alonso's positioning was a bit poor, and they were able to play balls in behind him, so that was their outlet. And there was another opportunity where you had Aubameyang press Azpilicueta and dispossess him, then run on goal and cut in on Rudiger before poking a poor effort at Kepa that he probably should have done better with. So when you think about it, Arsenal's setup made sense. It's similar to what Spurs did it to Chelsea at Wembley. Press Jorginho, have the center forwards move out into the channels. Although you're allowing Chelsea space in the wide areas for the fullbacks, when they push forward, they don't have an aerial threat in the box. So Arsenal were comfortable in that regard. So now it's about Chelsea. So let's get to them, see how they look to cause Arsenal problems and where they found an advantage if they did in the first half. Chelsea's issues in the final third stemmed with the fact that Arsenal's system did prevent them from really gaining control of the game. Like I said, Jorginho was unable to affect it. Conte isn't renowned for doing that. Eden Hazard didn't really vary his movement, and when he tried to drop off a bit deeper, Socrates was always near him, and that heavily put the onus on the wider players to get something done. Willian wasn't offering much of a threat, and neither Willian or Pedro were getting the right service in the areas that they need to threaten. The same goes for Hazard. So when you look across the pitch, if Jorginho's not getting involved, if the wider players in advanced positions aren't really offering a threat in the box because there's no aerial threat, Chelsea had to go a different route. Most of the times this season, they've relied on Rudiger and David Luiz's passing to get the job done. In the opening stages, we saw Aubameyang and Lacazette do a good job of tracking them, but as the half wore on, David Luiz in particular caused a threat with his ability to play passes from deeper positions. One of the opening plays, we do see the ball actually switched out to Azpilicueta from a deeper position, and he locates Hazard making the run across Socrates, and he delivers a cross into the box, and Hazard should do better as he gets across goal side, but he fires a shot wide. Then we see more of Luiz in more of a deeper position closer to his box, but again, no one picking him up. The first warning sign saw Pedro make a run across Koscielny, who was trying to keep a highlight, who was trying to push him offside, but that didn't really work out for him. He makes the run in behind the ball. He controls it. The ball bounces. Leno comes off his line, but Pedro chips it over him inches wide of the net. That wasn't the first and that wasn't the last time that we see that. On another occasion, we see Luiz switch the ball out to Azpilicueta. What happens there is now Pedro's occupying Koscielny, and that's what we often saw as well. Because if Aubameyang's not tracking, if Guendouzi's on Conte, then someone needs to pick up Azpilicueta. That was a breakdown from Arsenal. The cross into the box this time for Hazard, sees him try to get onto it, but Koscielny reads it well and he clears his lines. Again, a big warning sign, but nothing really comes from that play. And then we look to another opportunity again. We see Luiz clip the ball over the top, and Pedro breaks him behind between Kolasinac and Koscielny, but the ball is a bit too heavy, and we see Leno come off and he's able to pick it up. But that is how Luiz was really getting at this backline. He was playing balls, he wasn't being pressed, he was able to play it over the top, he was able to switch it out wide, and besides that, Chelsea never really got anything going. They did hit the cross, they did hit the post via corner kick. Marcos Alonso had a great opportunity, but besides that, Arsenal's backline weren't really tested besides Luiz's long balls over the top. So now let's get to Arsenal, see how they were able to take a 2-goal lead into halftime and why Chelsea were unable to cope. Arsenal, on the other hand, despite getting the tactical advantage over Chelsea, their chances weren't really created based on that 4v3, moving to the diamond and stifling Chelsea's attack. They kind of did it through set pieces, and that was key for them, because when we do look at it, you look at one of their opening chances, just stems from a Tyrrell free kick, goes into the box, and Koscielny is free from point-blank range to nod his effort on goal. However, Kepa was able to push it over the net, and that was an instinctive save, but it was a warning sign, and it did lead to more issues for Chelsea, because when you look at the opening goal, it just stems from a simple short corner, Xhaka into Tyrrell. Tyrrell ends up pulling it back, and when he pulls it back, the cross into the box ends up going into Lacazette, who controls it in right half space, gets away from Pedro's challenge, and then he's able to gain a yard on Marcos Alonso, moving out wide, and he fires a shot into the top corner of the near post that you have to harshly critique Kepa, because you can't get beaten there, especially given the fact that despite Lacazette building up all that power with his right foot, he shouldn't be able to score from that angle. He did. Arsenal go up 1-0, and then when you look to the second goal, following Luiz getting booked for a cynical foul on Ramsey, it's Tyrrell again from the right, clipping a ball into the box where Kolasinac is able to get over Pedro and not into the path of Socrates. And with Socrates picking up the ball there, no one closes him down. He clips the ball over the defense for Koscielny. Jorginho keeps him on side, and he's able to shoulder his effort into the net. But when you think about it, besides that, besides getting those set piece opportunities, Arsenal never really caused Chelsea many issues from open play. There's tactical setup. The decision to move to a diamond did stop Jorginho. It did prevent Chelsea from building out of the back, and it did stifle their minimal creative options. But besides that, when you look at the fact that Arsenal were able to score on set pieces, you have to blame Chelsea's mental fortitude, and you have to blame individual mistakes for the fact that Arsenal were able to execute from these positions. So now let's move to the second half, see how Chelsea aimed to rescue the game and why Arsenal were able to hold on out. The second half of the Emirates Stadium was very dry. Chelsea didn't change much, especially in the opening 15 minutes. They still were able to control possession now based on the fact that they were pressing a bit higher. They were specifically pressing on goal kicks when Xhaka dropped off. They had Hazard there. When the center backs split out, they had the front players pushing out to them in Willian and Pedro. Arsenal couldn't play out the back. They were pushing their shuttlers out to the fullbacks. They were really trying to get a grip of the game, but they weren't causing Arsenal any problems. They still had the advantage out in the wider areas, and we saw Willian around the 55th minute mark get the ball from a deeper position. Tyrrell wasn't tracking him. Bellerin allowed him to push forward, and then he was able to pull the ball back to the edge of the box. And what happened there was that Pedro was able to move away from Kolasinac as he drifted central. Guendouzi didn't pick him up, and he was able to get onto the ball, but he fired his effort over the net. That was one opportunity for Chelsea, but besides that, still the same issue, not creating much, which led to Sarri bringing on Giroud, bringing on Barkley for Kovacic, but even that didn't change anything. Giroud wasn't getting much service. Hazard moved out to the left, and we'll get to his impact in a second, and Barkley didn't offer anything of a goal-scoring threat that Kovacic was doing when he was on the field. Arsenal also turned to the bench. Iwobi and Maitland-Niles came on, but Arsenal's original system did get swapped when they were forced to bring on Elneny for Bellerin. It saw Maitland-Niles move out to right back. It saw Iwobi and Tyrrell operate in the wider positions, and Guendouzi and Xhaka play deeper with Elneny just ahead of them to still sit on Jorginho whenever he got on the ball. However, Hazard moving to the left did change things. He was able to drift off into these central areas, drop off deeper to get the ball. There was a bit of a combination with Alonso. We saw them time after time try to operate in spaces in the left channel behind the right back. We saw on one occasion Hazard get played in by Alonso, and he was able to fire across through the 6-yard box. No one attacked it. Later on in the game, we saw them attack Maitland-Niles, and Hazard get the ball, or Alonso get the ball from David Luiz, switch it out to Hazard, then make the run into that left half space. And when Alonso got it, he swung and fired his cross on goal that Leno was able to push away. Besides that, Hazard's only other opportunity was when Rudiger stepped forward and slid the ball between Xhaka and Kolasinac for Hazard. And he was able to run at Koscielny, cut in, and evade Xhaka, who was recovering, but he fired a shot over the net. There was only one real save where Kepa was forced into against Arsenal, but for the most part, they dropped off into deeper positions. At times it was 2 banks of 4, and Chelsea couldn't really offer much. They did have a threat in the box. When Giroud came on, there was no real link-up play. Hudson-Odoi did come on later on to play on the right for Pedro, but again, nothing from Chelsea in the final third, just lacking conviction. Hazard didn't really get going into the final 15 minutes, and even he wasn't at his best. And if he's not ticking, then Chelsea isn't ticking. So let me know what you guys think. Does Sarri need to change his system? Will Chelsea finish in the top 4? And what about Arsenal? We see this great performance from them, but can they replicate these types of performances on a weekly basis? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.